Everything else in Nazism is irrational, just like religion. It praises a guy who lives in Berlin, or wherever they said Hitler lived. But it didn't praise some supernatural guy, but it's all a religion. It's all submit the individual to the will of some temporal reality. If you name it God, there's actually a group of people collecting those sacrifices. So whether you name it a god or not, if you name it Stalin or you name it God, the money goes to the Pope or it goes to Stalin. It's all the same thing. The question is, do you recognize rights or not? Saying I believe in God or I don't believe in God, I'm going to kill 1 million people. Saying that's no difference. So you can't blame their moral inaction, Stalin and whoever, on the fact, and Mao Zedong, on the fact that they were atheists. Because the theists do just as terrible things and will use nuclear weapons. Iran will use them if we don't stop it. I hope Israel uses them first. That's our only hope, is that Israel will do like it did with Iraq. It knocked out Iraq's nuclear plant. It let the French go in and make it. Did everything it could to stop them. And this stupid bastard French went in there and made a nuclear plant. And they let that get built, and then they took it out, destroyed it. That's what we're going to have to do with Iran. At some point, they are going to nuke somebody. And if they don't, Pakistan will. And if they don't, India will. There's still time, I guess. Until the bomb drops, there's time. Not much, but there's time. I'm sorry this video is a bit of a marathon, a bit disorganized, but there's so much I've been digesting about this new atheist movement. And the one thing that I've found is the most important, fascinating thing about it is all these individuals and their lack of an ability to justify morality, to provide a basis for morality. So, and there are different tries. Some of their tries are better than others. I think Hitchens is the best. And he's got a litany of names. He says Lucretius, Galileo, Thomas Jefferson, Thomas Paine, Spinoza, and Einstein. I'm surprised I can remember those 6, and I've heard to name a couple others. He said if you could get a society and base it on the moral tenets of those individuals and their philosophies, and then take that society and run that society and show me that it ended up in dictatorship and famine and want and misery, then you could tell me atheism was bad. But he says that's humanism. Screw this fact that atheists were communists is fine. Atheism has nothing to do with it. Because like we say, every single bit of things that happen in religions and whatever motive they happen for, they happen on earth in day-to-day reality. Any money that goes to and from anybody. So it's all just a question of what happens in reality. If you've got a dictatorship for one person, as for another, as for the Pope, as for God, as for Stalin, it's a dictatorship. That's the point. So he says if you could establish a non-dictatorship, a society based on the principles of Lucretius, Spinoza, Einstein, Thomas Jefferson, Thomas Paine, Galileo, and that is what he advocates. Now, that's fine to just name a litany of philosophers, but it's a bit messy, isn't it? Especially when you get past 2 or 3. If you get 6 philosophers, and there's a couple more he's named outside of what I can remember off the top of my head here, that's too many. You can't point at a large group of stuff and say these are the morals I believe in, and then say that we have a moral compass and an innate morality. And here's this silly thing. He talks about Ayn Rand. He says her novels are terrible. And then he says that the only book he really liked of hers was The Virtue of Selfishness, and he didn't care too much for the implications of that because he believes there's enough selfishness in the world. He believes people are innately selfish, and what we need is a moderating influence on that rather than to encourage selfishness. It's as if he didn't read the book, as if he didn't read her novels, or as if he wasn't thinking too hard when he did. Maybe he just doesn't want to come out on the side of Ayn Rand, but he's coming into a position that she prepared decades ago. Militant, moral atheism. Except he comes in as a militant atheist without a real strong card to play for morality. Now I'm holding you in suspense. I've got the answer for morality, and we're going to get you to it. But I just want to get you into the sense where we see that it's really a question. These individuals who think they get in this little cabal together under the Four Horsemen interview thing, and they're trying to decide what they're going to do to save the world, and they think that they can question Islam, a world militant movement that believes it's right. And they believe they're right, and they're four individuals, and here's Islam. And they're talking as if they have the reins of the world in their hands. They do. I'm saying, isn't it interesting? They don't know what to do with the question of morality. Aristotle tried to ground morality, and he ultimately said there's not a basis for morality. He said it's what good men do, and left open the question of how to justify that and how to define that. Aristotle couldn't, and as Leonard Peikoff notes, I think in his induction in physics and philosophy course, or was it in his philosophy of education course, he notes that Spinoza tried to justify irrational ethics, and he was not able to. Now, I don't know, I'm not familiar with Spinoza, got a couple of his books, but haven't read them, so I have to take that as at face value for what it's worth, that Peikoff said it, and I haven't investigated for myself. But Spinoza is named as a rational ethicist, a humanist, and if that's all they can come up with, is to name Spinoza, and they can't just put Spinoza out there by himself. Like I said, Thomas Jefferson, Thomas Paine for those political implications, and a litany of others. Before we go into an explanation of morality and talk about what exactly morality is and how to justify it, before we give an answer to the question that baffles these four gentlemen who are trying to change the world, let's address one quick question that some people don't even realize there's a coherent answer to, including these four gentlemen. So before we go on, let's answer the question, why is radical Islam more popular in Europe than it is in America? Now, it's suggested by somebody, one of these four gentlemen, I believe it was Sam Harris, who said it might be because America doesn't marginalize faith as much as Europe does. And you're probably familiar with the idea that in Europe, 30, 40, 50% of people are atheists in any given country. There's not very many churchgoers. The people who do believe in God are sort of like, yeah, there's probably something out there. So, as somebody put it, I can't remember who it was, said, the religion I was brought up on in Britain was we had won the war, and Winston Churchill was God. That was their religion. And possibly is this the thing that in America the Islam religion has some respect because we respect different faiths. I don't think that's what it is. I think that we absorb people in America. Even when they try to set themselves apart, we still let them be their own thing. We still don't call them an outside group, except in certain marginal ways. We don't institutionalize racism against them and stuff. We used to, but the history of America is exactly the history of doing away with those barriers. As we've seen, Europe is still chock full of those barriers in spite of the fact that we thought we had liberated them from them in World War II. They still have that basic instinct to submit instead of fight, to turn the other cheek, to look the other way, to not worry about it. It's not my problem. So the government's got it under control, or there's nothing I can do. If something bad's going on, I can't do anything anyway. That's the European way, and then it's gotten to them again. Why is it more popular in Europe? Because Europe will submit.